Good morning, guys. My name is Sean Dexter. Welcome you back to the Mango Grove for your daily Bitcoin and market analysis. Today, we will be revisiting some ideas that we discussed leading into this bull market just prior to this massive run Bitcoin has had thus far. Just because those ideas worked out and everything's unfolding now doesn't mean we just throw those ideas away, right? In fact, I've always meant to revisit those ideas, but as the market started moving, as things started getting exciting, there were just other things to talk about, right? But now, as the markets cool down, as the markets retest those ideas, we can revisit them, right? And that's something you guys need to keep at the back of your mind at all times, right? Just because you had an idea that played out, don't throw it away, because the market will retest those ideas. Today, the market is doing just that. So for those of you who have been with us for at least a couple of months, this is going to be a good refresher of the ideas that we've been keeping at the back of our mind leading into this new macro run that Bitcoin has been going into. And for those of you who are just joining us, you guys will get a good summary of at least a couple of the components that we've been looking at on Bitcoin. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. As usual, we're going to start with a trend and volatility analysis of the dashboard. Over here, we're looking at the 4-hour time frame on the first row, the 12-hour time frame on the second row, and the daily time frame on the third row, right? The 12 hours long, the daily is long, the 4-hour is now short. It flipped short 2.5 days ago. Okay, the vol is really high, 71, and this is actually getting really interesting now, guys. The 12-hour vol has gone back up to 46. Bitcoin is sitting around 22,840 now. I have gone ahead and put an alert on my 12-hour dashboard over here because I am expecting this to flip from long to neutral. Yes, you guys heard me. I'm actually expecting this to flip from long to neutral. I could be wrong on this, but I'm going to be watching this as a hawk, right? Especially if this flips to neutral and we start seeing the 4-hour flip back and forth between neutral and short. This is going to give me the indication for a deeper leg towards the downside. Perhaps even testing the trend on the daily time frame to flip neutral temporarily. The reason I'm looking at this, guys, is because the 12-hour time frame has been long for 32 days now. Okay, 32 days. There are 2 12-hour candles per day, right? So that means that we've had 64 candles of the 12-hour staying long. And remember, we've also had the weekly time frame on the dashboard long, right? We've not included a screenshot of that over here, but the weekly on Bitcoin just switched long around 7 days ago, right? So we officially have not just the weekly long, but we also have the 2-day long, we have the 4-day long, and as you guys can see right over here, we have the daily long, right? So across the mid time frames, guys, we are long, and now the high time frame is long as well. We are due for the mid time frames to go into a downtrend, right? Because remember, guys, markets ebb and flow, and if you guys remember your multi-time frame analysis from the C program, you guys know that we have an impulsive move on the high time frames, which is what we got over here on the weekly, right? Look down over here, guys. However, when you get your impulsive move on the lower time frames, you tend to go into a consolidation period. This consolidation period could be sideways or it could be a downtrend, right? And usually these downtrends on the lower time frames tend to test the key levels that the impulsive move broke on the higher time frames, right? Which gets us to this chart right over here, guys. If you guys do remember, on the way to the upside, we were talking about this key level at $22,800 that far too many people were ignoring, which is why a lot of people are confused as to why Bitcoin was spending so much time around this region. Well, it was because of this key level. If you guys zoom into the lower to mid time frames, you guys will see that Bitcoin was smacking up against the 22,800 level constantly. And we said that until Bitcoin closes the weekly candle above that level, we're not going to get too bullish, right? That's going to be resistance until it flips it. And then we flipped it on this candle right over here. We struggled a tad bit right over here. We closed the candle, the prior candle underneath that level, but the next candle closed above it. So what do we have? We have an impulsive move that closed above a key inflection point, right? But what do we talk about just upstairs over here? When you have your impulsive move on your high time frames, your lower time frames will inevitably come down to test key inflection points that the high time frame just flipped, right? So we just flipped a key level at around 22,800. Now the question is, will the lower time frames come down to test that level and break it towards the downside, right? We already have our 4-hour that has flipped short. The big trigger for me is going to be when the 12-hour on the dashboard flips short as well. We're already seeing some initial signs, but we can't get ahead of ourselves just yet because this inflection point is still support, right? The big triggers will be one, if the 12-hour flips short, and then if the 12-hour downtrend cascades on over to the daily and flips the daily into a short trend as well. Because then what you're going to have is all of your time frames on the mid to low time frames on a short trend, right? Which essentially would allow for us to hunt for a deeper pullback on the weekly time frame, right? Because then you're going to be hunting for a higher low on the weekly time frame, looking for continuation. Because remember, as much as all of this may be painful and look ugly, the weekly is still in a long trend, and the weekly has had its impulsive move. It hasn't had its higher low just yet. The question is how deep is this higher low? We never really know, right? The deepness comes from which trends on the intermediate time frames flip short before the higher time frames step in and take the trend back to the upside, right? Because now we have the impulsive move to the upside. Now we have the move from the 4-hour pushing price down. Does the 12-hour push price down further, or does the 12-hour stop it and take it up? We don't know that, which is why the trigger to the long on the dashboard flipping to neutral will be our first warning sign. And then when it flips short, we will be setting our alerts for our daily time frame as well. That's how the cascading multi-time frame analysis allows you to hunt for those deeper pullbacks on the weekly time frame, right? That's where the opportunity is. And when we get this deep pullback on Bitcoin, I will be actually picking up some few altcoins that I'm eyeing for a longer time frame pick as well. But we'll talk about that in another video. Okay, I know that was a lot to take in, so let's go ahead and summarize everything that I just discussed. We are going to be looking at the 12-hour trend on the dashboard. Why? Because we've had 30 days of uptrend on the dashboard with 35% returns, right? Well, while this has been amazing, and while this could definitely keep going to the upside, we want to be cautious and we want to set our alerts to be able to get ready for a pullback to hunt for a higher low opportunity on the weekly time frame, because the weekly flipped long 7 days ago, and that higher low on the weekly would be a really nice buy. We are also seeing some signs for a pullback based on what I am seeing on DXY, right? I mentioned this to you guys last week. I believe it was on Thursday's video. I said, hey guys, DXY has gone the way we discussed around a month or so ago, but it is getting a bit extended, and a bounce on DXY could lead to a pullback on Bitcoin, right? And we're kind of seeing that now, so we're going to be discussing that very soon. So again, to summarize, if the 12-hour flips short, we'll be looking for a pullback to cascade on over to the daily time frame. If the daily even flips from long to neutral, guys, look for a nice pullback. Key targets that I'd be looking at is around 21,100 to around 20,300, right? This is an entire zone, okay, an entire range where a weekly could wick onto 20,300 and still close about 21,100. So manage your emotions and your position size accordingly. Now, let's zoom down over here and look at our DXY chart paired with our Bitcoin chart, right? Over here, you guys can see that we are looking at Bitcoin on the top panel and DXY on the bottom panel. Now, I've spent several videos discussing what we found over here. We've been talking about this for at least 8 weeks, right? More than 8 weeks, maybe it's been 12 weeks, where we were discussing this idea of whenever DXY has a death cross. Okay, the death cross is essentially the way we look at the death cross on Mango is when the 200 EMA, okay, crosses above the 55 EMA. Okay, the 200 crossing above the 55, they're using EMAs over SMAs. And if you guys want to know why, I've done a specific video where I compared SMAs and EMAs. They both have their advantages. One isn't better than the other, and it's important to understand what their advantages are. So I really urge you guys to go ahead and watch that video. I think it's only a 7-minute long video, and there are some really nice golden nuggets in there as well. So yeah, EMA or SMAs, go ahead and watch that video. Okay, going back to what I was saying. Whenever we get the dead cross, which is the 200 EMA crossing above the 55 EMA, Bitcoin tends to go on a rally. Okay, we've gone ahead and gone through the history of DXY and Bitcoin, essentially all the way from 2012 to Bitcoin's current price action, which is essentially 11 years of price action, right? We have found that every time DXY has had a dead cross, Bitcoin has had a rally, right? It's either a mini rally of a few 100%, right? Which isn't really mini at all. It is still opportunity that you want to capture. or it could be a mega rally. So either mini rally or mega rally, right? The mini rally usually coincides with a initial death cross, okay, which we call a fake cross, where you get a death cross on the Dixie chart, but then immediately recrosses into a golden cross, and then eventually you get the real dead cross, which is a prolonged downtrend on Dixie, and that leads to a mega bull run on Bitcoin, right? So we are not there yet. We don't have the real dead cross. Oh, well, that's assuming that history repeats, right? We don't know whether things are going to be exactly like it has been in the past, but in the past, guys, what has happened is we've had a fake cross, and then you get the real cross, and then you get your big rally, right? And now we are speculating that history will rhyme again, and not based on only just what we are seeing on Dixie, but also based on what we're seeing on our Ichimoku and other components of our bull market thesis as well, right? We're not going to cover everything today, but all of this is to say that we had a death cross that showed up around the date of our projection, right? So around November, December, we said that, hey, if everything goes according to plan, Dixie is likely going to get its death cross around the last week of Jan. Well, you know, Dixie actually did get its death cross around the second week of Jan or third week of Jan, and Bitcoin did have its huge rally as well, right? Now, the question is Dixie overextended? Because ever since we got the death cross, guys, or rather, ever since we were projecting the death cross, Dixie has been in a massive downtrend, right? It's been aggressively down, and the reason I started looking for the death cross, guys, was because of what we're seeing over here on the dynamic, okay? So this is the weekly dynamic on Dixie, and we lost the dynamic trend on Dixie right over here. That's around the time where I started pulling up the death cross, right? Because this happened first. Remember, the dynamic is an adaptive trend indicator that adapts to the volatility and responds faster to price action than your traditional trend indicators, right? Which is why I like to use it for my entries and exits for crypto, because crypto moves extremely fast. Now you guys can see that Dixie was moving extremely fast. It was extremely volatile. It had a crazy move, right? And then it lost the dynamic. So that was a signal to actually look for the death cross showing up. It's lined up with the other bull market thesis components that we were looking at on Bitcoin that said that, hey, Bitcoin is going to be going into the rising bull market stage. Not the parabolic bull market stage, but the rising bull market stage, right? If you guys do remember, we were looking at the 4 stages of the mining cycle, and we said that, hey, Bitcoin is neither in the bear market phase, nor is it in the bull market phase, but it's in between. It's in that in-between phase, and it's going to be leading into that in the first month of Jan, leading into Feb, right? And things did play out that way, right? But those ideas will get tested. Just because you got the initial phase of your idea doesn't mean everything's going to go hunky-dory and we're going to make our way all the way up to 42,000. Yes, we hit our initial target of 24,000, right? That was target 1. Target 2 is 42,000. Now, just because you get target 1, guys, don't get cocky and look for target 2. Okay, don't just be like, all right, this is definitely going to happen. We are oracles in this community. We know best. No, do not get into that mindset. That has hurt me in the past. We will not let that happen again, right? We got to constantly look for our ideas to get tested. And now we are seeing the initial signs of just that, right? Look at what Dixie's doing, guys. If you guys remember on my video on Thursday, right after the FOMC meeting, we discussed how, hey, guys, Dixie has gotten overextended. Look at this move on Dixie, guys. Just look at this move. This has been so aggressive. It's been ridiculous, right? It's kind of rhyming what it did to the upside, but still, markets move in ebb and flows, and markets get back into equilibrium. And over here, the equilibrium trade would be a snap back into the dynamic, right? At the very least, retest the dynamic. We've not tested the dynamic ever since we broke it down over here. This was all the way back in November. That's when I started looking for the Dixie to cross bearish, to get its death cross, right? And the death cross only happened in Jan, okay? So now we can use this as a proxy for the recross or the uncross, right? What do we talk about over here? Right? What we talked about over here? We talked about how the first fake cross happens around here, then you get your recross into the golden cross, then the actual dead cross with the downtrend, right? Well, we got the initial fake cross, right? The dynamic now, the reclaim, Dixie reclaiming the dynamic may be the indication that the death cross on DXY, right, the death cross of the 55 EMA and the 200 EMA may actually uncross, and then that's going to be a sign for us to get really cautious on Bitcoin. Because remember, I know this is a lot to take in, guys. Even our Ichimoku theory is telling us that, hey, we may have a rally on Bitcoin, but we can't get too excited for a parabolic run. We can only get excited for a run to around the top of the cloud, and then watch what price does, as well as all of our other indicators, because until the cloud turns green on Bitcoin, we cannot get too excited. Okay, right over here, DXY on the daily as well. Oof, look at that. We have closed above the daily dynamic. The last time we were above the daily dynamic, guys, was all the way back over here. This again was towards the end of last year, right? November, right? So we got the initial fake above the dynamic, broke underneath, retested it. How similar is this to how crypto behaves against the dynamic too, guys? The initial fake above the dynamic draws in the liquidity, and then downtrend, 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 gave you another retest, rejected it, and downtrend. This time, however, it cleared the dynamic, closed above it. Do we see a move to the upside? This move to the upside would be testing the weekly dynamic. Closes above the weekly dynamic would likely coincide with an eventual test of the death cross as well. So we want to keep an eye on all of this, because this snap up, guys, of DXY moving up to the weekly dynamic is likely going to coincide with a nice bid opportunity for Bitcoin, right? This doesn't mean, by the way, DXY moving to the upside does not mean that the bull market is over. No. It just means that, hey, Bitcoin will see some pressure, okay, as will all assets, but it just lines up with everything else that we're looking at on our macro bull market thesis. Okay, so today we covered a lot, and I hope I didn't overwhelm you guys, but there's just way too much to cover, and that's precisely why so many of you are confused, right? Because there's a macro environment to worry about, but Bitcoin is turning around. Do you get in now? Do you get in later? Do you wait for a pullback? Markets are moving up, markets are moving down, etc. So let's go ahead and do a quick summary, right? We are going to be watching for the 12-hour trend on the dashboard. That's kind of going to be a thermometer, essentially, as to whether Bitcoin's strength is strong enough to keep moving to the upside, or whether it's going to roll over and test the deeper weekly levels. Because remember, markets move in ebb and flow. If we start seeing the mid to low time frames attacking this level and closing up underneath this level, that's when we can start looking towards our targets of around 21,100 to 20,300, right? That's why we'll be looking for Bitcoin to put in a higher low. We want Bitcoin to defend that level, right? We do not want to see candles close underneath the $20,000, $19,000 region. That's when it gets bad. That's when we will have to discard our thesis of Bitcoin rising into those bigger numbers, leading into those Ichimoku targets that we do have, right? The DXY chart is going to be something that we're going to be reintroducing and keeping an eye on now over the next week or so to come. So again, there's a lot more to cover. There are a lot more other components that we've been discussing over the past 8 weeks, right? And I'll be reintroducing them now as the markets are cooling down, as the markets are going to be testing those key levels that we have reclaimed, right? The market is going to essentially give us a breather while it gets ready for its next move, right? We will use that time to realign ourselves. For those of you who are new to the community, go ahead and hit the subscribe, hit the bell notification icon so you guys don't miss these videos, because there is a lot to cover and I'm struggling to cover it in a 20-minute video. And if you guys miss one video, you end up missing a massive component, and trying to catch up with the older videos gets really difficult because they're 20 minutes long, man, and I know you guys don't have time. So yeah, hit the subscribe, hit the notification icon, and hey, if you guys are enjoying the content, let me know in the comments, because your comments have been what's motivating me to keep these coming on a freaking regular basis. They're really time consuming and takes a lot of effort and energy on my end, but you guys have been, honestly, you guys are awesome. Thank you all for the comments. I'll see you guys in the next one. Do it the mango way, do it the easy way, do it the stress-free way. Ciao.